Now, I've been talking to investors who've said Bitcoin is old news. The new hot cryptocurrency is something called Ethereum. In fact, I interviewed Fred Wilson of Union Square Ventures and asked him for his prediction for the year, and he had this to say about cryptocurrency in general. Take a listen.
I think that Ethereum will bypass, the market cap of Ethereum will bypass the market cap of Bitcoin by the end of the year.
So of all the predictions he could have made about anything in tech, that is what he chose. Olaf, first of all, explain how Bitcoin and Ethereum are different.
Yeah, so Bitcoin has a programming language that you can use to interact with the protocol as a developer. It's a very limited programming language. In Ethereum, this programming language is much more expressive, and it's higher level. What this means is that for developers building applications on top of the protocol, it's actually much easier to work with. So what we've seen in Ethereum is a much richer organic developer ecosystem develop very, very quickly, which is what has driven Ethereum's price growth, which has been actually much more aggressive than Bitcoin.
So would you agree with what Fred had to say?
Yeah, I would agree with Fred.
You think the market cap is going to surpass?
I don't know if I would agree with as aggressive a timeline as Fred, but I think in the long term, absolutely.
How long?
I would give it I would extend that out 1 year, so maybe by the end of 2018.
Interesting. Corey, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think Ethereum is really interesting, too, in the way that it sort of uses a distributed network to embed both sort of security and ownership of Ethereum, that it's a much more like TCP/IP than it is sort of the client-server method or model. But I think so. It's fascinating from that regard, and therefore could have some really interesting different use cases. Still using the general concept of blockchain. But I think that the other problem is that it's harder and harder to use Bitcoin. And one of the big issues that I think not a lot of people are talking about in the Bitcoin world are how hard it is to close a transaction. The speed of closing a transaction in Bitcoin is getting exponentially worse. And it's been happening, interestingly, coinciding with the big rise in the price. But it's just hard to do a deal on Bitcoin right now. We're showing a chart right now that shows how long it takes to get a confirmation on the Bitcoin network of a Bitcoin transaction. And it's getting slower and slower, and that may be a problem that's embedded into the actual coin itself, so that the Bitcoin can't really get out of its own way with this problem. There's been a lot of discussion of this problem for some time, well over a year in the Bitcoin community, but the fixes haven't worked. And the proposed fixes are challenging the very nature of Bitcoin. So unless a solution is found to this, I think that it's going to be a real problem, a wind in the face of Bitcoin's ascendancy, because the transactions, the deals just can't get done.